meeting, and because there's nowhere else to go but the Council of Governors. We've got a fairly full agenda today. Not many papers, but there's a lot to go over. And although I'm chairing the meeting today, Andrew hopes to be able to join us as well. So I'm just looking, I can't see him at the moment, but hopefully he'll be with us shortly. Andrew, that was timing. Thank you, everybody. The meeting will be recorded and put up on the website. So please keep your cameras on, and please, if we can, as we all know, refrain from using the chat unless necessary, because clearly Rashmi cannot engage with conversations there. But you know, please use your hands if you wish to speak, and let's get on with the meeting. Any declarations of interest? On the agenda, no. Any apologies? I've got Damien and Caroline from the non-execs, and Mike Corcoran, Penny Owens, Jonathan Smith and Liam Spalding from the Governors. Is anybody aware of anybody else? Apologies? No? Well, let's move on. First of all, if I can just, we have a few resignations. Just need to announce of Governors. Governor Councillor Julie Lumsden, representing West Northamptonshire, stepped down from the role, and we wish to thank her for her contribution she's made as a governor for the period, and we are liaising with West Northants for a replacement. So watch this space. Richard May's doing liaison with them at the moment. In terms of the last meeting, the minutes of the last meeting, was there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Be happy to accept the minutes. Richard, do you put your hand up? Sorry.
I was going to apologise. We put a typo in the briefing note. Julie was representing North Northants Council, not West Northants. So just for the record there, my apologies.
Thank you. I must admit, my mind was challenging me when I said West Northants there, because I've met Julie at North Northants Health and Wellbeing Board, so I wondered. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Minutes of the last meeting accepted, and there are no open actions. Before we go on to Laura's update, Andrew, do you want to come in and give an update on this 3 things you wanted to mention?
Thanks so much, Trevor. Actually, there's 4 things now. I've added another aspect to the list. Morning, everybody. Good to see you. Yeah, I've got 4 things I just wanted to briefly update you on. The first thing is certainly mixed news, and I think from my perspective, sad and disappointing news, and that is that Laura, our CEO, will be departing these shores. She has an exciting new opportunity at Cambridge University Hospitals, and she's obviously accepted that position. So from a personal perspective, I'm really sorry to see Laura go. I think she's brought a very refreshing, no-nonsense and courageous approach to her role. And she's made a lot of changes, a lot of positive changes to the organisation and her tenure here. And I think also we should recognise that she operated under very difficult circumstances. I think Cambridge University Hospital was very lucky to get her. There is a new temporary structure that we'll be putting in place to ensure a smooth transition, so there's no gaps within the transition, and that is that Julie Hogg, the current chief nurse, will be taking over as interim managing director, and Richard Mitchell will also be spending more time at UHN, and to that extent the executive team at UHN will report directly to Richard. So again, that's to ensure that we have a smooth transition and no catches are dropped. I'm sure that you would all like to join me in thanking Laura for everything that she's done over the last couple of years she's been here, and wishing her well in her new assignment. Let's give Laura a round of applause. We can't hear the round of applause, but we can imagine it.
I can see it. It's fine.
You can see it. Good, good. That's the main thing, as long as you can see it. The second point I wanted to just draw your attention to is our financial position. I know colleagues have been keeping you well updated with the financial position at UHN. It's not great, and I will not try and sugar the pill on that. We ended the year with a significant deficit of £114 million. That was actually in line with our revised forecast, but it was significantly over our original forecast for the year. I think probably as a result of that, a number of us, so Richard, myself, now Julie and Sarah Stansfield, have been invited to a meeting in London with the CEO of NHS, Jim Mackey, and the CFO of NHS, Elizabeth O'Mahony. I welcome the meeting. I think it's exactly the right thing for us to be involved in. It's the sort of thing I would have been involved in the private sector, and those of you who have been involved in the private sector will not be surprised by this. It's an opportunity for us to talk about our performance and to talk about the drivers of the deficit. And I think there are, three main planks of challenge that we have. The first one is structural. And that will include challenges that come from the hospital organisation, the estate. It's an extremely expensive estate to run. Obviously, a lot of those structural things are outside of our control. Strategic, we have some strategic challenges, and those are certainly partially within our control. And then we have operational. And those operational challenges are completely within our control, and we need to be clear about what they are and what our plans are for dealing with those. So I welcome the opportunity to discuss all of those with Jim and Elizabeth, along with Richard and Sarah and Julie. I think it would be great for them to just get a better understanding of the challenges that this organisation faces and frankly has faced for a number of years. We can then be clear about what actions that we are taking and have already taken to improve the situation, but also an opportunity to seek help and support as well. And so I welcome the chance and the opportunity to have a detailed discussion with Jim and Elizabeth and see what help we can get from the centre to improve our financial performance. That meeting was going to take place this week. It has now been postponed because Sarah's on holiday. So I think the meeting is now in a couple of weeks' time. So we will make sure that we keep all of you updated on the outcome of that meeting. The third point I wanted to discuss with you is, and this is probably related to our financial situation, but it's to do with the structure of the organisation. And as you know, we've been working very collaboratively with University Hospitals of Leicester for about 2 years on a number of strategic opportunities, and we've shared talent as well. And the obvious ones there will be Julie Hogg as Chief Nurse and Will Moynihan as the Chief Digital Information Officer. That has delivered benefits. We've worked hard on putting a strategy together on a number of areas, and we're in the process of implementing that strategy. As you will recall, I updated you in April at this meeting on additional steps that we were taking to strengthen our collaboration with UHL, and that involved meeting as a joint board in common with colleagues from University Hospitals of Leicester, and also to work on our committee structure as well, to move to more of a committees in common structure. And that work is still in train. I think, if I'm honest with you, I think probably over the last 2 or 3 years, NHS has been ambivalent about group structures and has not had a clear position as to whether it supports them or not. And I think it probably takes the view that it's a horses for courses approach, and there'll be some situations where group structures and mergers are appropriate and some where they're not. We've been informed that NHS would like to conduct what they are calling a rapid review of our strategic organizational structure. This will look at what we've done over the last couple of years, the targets that we've set, the strategies that we've set, and the results that have been delivered as a result of that structure against the targets that we set. I really welcome it. I think it's the right thing to do. It's an independent assessment of the benefits of closer collaboration and group structures. It's going to take about 4 to 5 weeks, so we'll get the feedback on this probably around the middle of July. Quite a few people are being interviewed. I haven't seen the final list, but I certainly have my interview tomorrow. So it will be an external organisation. It's not being conducted by internal NHS England colleagues. It's an external professional organisation. We'll get the feedback and we'll decide, or it will be decided how we respond to that. I've no idea what the outcome of it will be. I don't think it's healthy to speculate on what the outcome might be, but our commitment to the governors is that we will keep you updated as much as we can as soon as the outcome is delivered. The fourth point I just wanted to update you on, which may sound slightly bizarre, given what I've just talked about, is that I had my appraisal yesterday, and there are always things to look forward to, as many of you will know. I've been critical of the appraisal process that the NHS uses for a number of years. We're using a different approach now, and I would like to just put on record my appreciation to Caroline Stevens, the UHN Senior Independent Director, Professor Tom Robinson, the UHL Senior Independent Director, and our own Simon Bayliss, Chair of Governors, who conducted my appraisal yesterday. It was done in an extremely professional way. I was very impressed with the way the guys handled it, the preparation that went into it. I think all executive and non-executive colleagues across UHN and UHL had the opportunity to provide feedback on me. And I had a very comprehensive 360-degree feedback as well, written feedback against, I think it was something like 65 different aspects under something like 5 different domains. So very professional and very detailed. I always think that feedback is the breakfast of champions. So I welcome the feedback. And I just wanted to let you know that we are taking appraisals very seriously. I think we've still got more work to do on them, but certainly as far as my approach was concerned, I was very impressed with the way the guys handle it. I'd like to thank Simon particularly for his contributions. And I will certainly be ensuring that all senior colleagues take advantage of the 360-degree feedback, because I think it's extremely important for senior people. Those, Trevor, were the 4 points I wanted to update on. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Andrew. There's a lot in there, I know, and in terms of absorbing it all, I suspect that people are in their minds might come back with some questions.
Yeah.
I see today, but it may be things that they want to sort of discuss going forward. So I would suggest that perhaps we, going back to your offer to sort of brief governors as quickly as we know anything, we will just look at the agenda going forward to see if we need to slip in any extra update meetings, just so that we can have that conversation with governors, not immediately, but maybe in a month or so's time, so that, because there wouldn't be a Council of Governors until September. So yeah, I'll liaise with Simon and Richard May about arranging a date and a time that we can at least put in the diary, even if we don't use it, so that people.
Yeah. And I just reiterate, Trevor, that if any governors want to contact me directly using my email address, a number of governors do this. I'm very happy to receive any comments or observations from governors, and I will certainly respond as promptly as possible.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll move on now to Laura, Chief Executive's update.
Thanks, Trevor, and thank you, Andrew, for your words. I just want to start by saying you're in really good hands with Julie Hogg, the chief nurse. Julie and I worked together at UCLH before I came to UHN. She's utterly brilliant. She's fantastic, and she's going to do a great job as managing director in the interim period. So I hope that all of you will welcome her. I know she's worked for the organisation for a couple of years, but she is obviously taking on a new role and is really good. So hopefully that gives you some assurance, and I'm sure Julie will come to the next Council of Governors, as I would expect Richard to as well. So there was a couple of questions that I'd been asked prior to the meeting. I haven't got the answers to all of them. I thought I would, because I only got them yesterday, but I've got the answers to most of them. I thought I would start with the bigger question, which is around the NOF ratings. So that's the framework by which all organisations are kind of judged against a group of peers, and our NOF rating has gone to NOF 4, which is not the lowest, because it's a rating score of 5, so providers in 5 are sort of the lowest performing providers, but it's not a good rating. NOF 4, it means that you've got significant challenges across a range of domains, including money and access for patients. And the question that I'd been asked by, I don't know, a governor, because they're anonymous when they come to me, was why have the KGH, NGH and UHL slipped down the NOF ratings over the course of the year? The fundamental reason is the finances, as Andrew has described, because at the front end of the year, we were on plan to meet the targets that we had been set. And by the end of the year, by Q3, which is where the NOF rating relates to, we were off plan. It also relates to access, and particularly in terms of waiting times, which is sometimes called RTT. The plan that we had been set by the region at the start of the year, we had agreed as a board not to meet because it was unaffordable. So we were always going to be under on the 18-week target as well. The actual sort of performance in terms of waiting list is pretty good at both Kettering and Northampton. We are not an outlier in terms of the numbers of patients that we see within 18 weeks. And actually, we don't have any long waiters anymore. So we're one of the trusts in the Midlands, or one of a few trusts in the Midlands, that don't have any patients waiting over 65 weeks for treatment. And we've got only 1% of patients now waiting over 52 weeks as well. Again, a really good achievement, but it's about the plan rather than the actuals, if that makes any sense. So that's the reason why Kettering and Northampton have been slipping down the ratings. It's a combination of missing the plan and also our financial circumstances. I do think that the waiting times in particular will improve over the next 6 months. We've managed to secure an extra 14 million. No, actually, sorry, it's 11 million. I got the figures wrong. 11 million from the ICB to do some additional work to provide more care for patients selectively. So that should see our waiting lists reduce and our elective performance increase. And actually, we're above plan at the moment for all of our sort of waiting list type ventures. On emergency and urgent care, we are seeing more patients arrive at the hospital. That has been an ongoing concern of mine since I arrived. Currently, we're seeing a 6% increase. It seems to be about a 6 or 7% increase, whichever year it is, but that's every year we're seeing an increase at the front door. And we have also got significant problems at the back door with patients requiring care in either their homes or transfer to care homes, and that is quite challenged at the moment. And we do have some issues at the front door as a result. Having said that, there are some green shoots. Kettering has always performed really well on 4 hours, meeting sort of 80% target of patients are seen within 4 hours. And Northampton has sustained a really good performance at 75% for the month of March and April, and going into May. So there are definitely some green shoots, which hopefully will improve our NOF rating. Having said that, because the money is so challenged across the organisations, it may be that the improvements we've made in quality and access sort of are counterbalanced by difficulties in the finances. So that's the NOF rating. Does anyone have any questions about that? If not, I'm going to move to the next question. Rashmi.
Yeah, particularly waiting list, but similarly, you know, I know it's a separate, but within the outpatient, and I raised with you before, especially, you know, some of the experience I had within ENT, and when you raise this sort of issue, you are, I mean, I've been encouraged just make it, because they're not extra clinics and all that, so you just make a complaint. I just wondered, you said last time there's extra resources put in, but I don't know whether how it is these clinics are, you know, put extra or not in terms of well, this is one example for ENT, but I mean along with others in outpatient. Thank you.
Yeah, so ENT is one of the specialties I'm worried about. So some specialties sort of consume their own patients. They've got enough demand, they've got enough capacity to meet the demand. ENT is one of the specialties that we do have a kind of mismatch in terms of capacity and demand on the service, and that has been long-standing. I think we're going to have to do something different with ENT, potentially insourcing or outsourcing to improve the position, for instance. In terms of where you look at spending money when you're looking at waiting times for treatment, the vast majority of treatment isn't inpatient treatment. It isn't. That's the difficult bit, but it isn't the vast majority of patients. Most patients who require hospital care come through outpatients. So a lot of the resources or ways that we try and improve kind of access is by improving outpatients, productive outpatients. We're working with the national team on that, and also putting on extra outpatients wherever possible, because you're right, Rashmi, it's not necessarily always about people coming in for treatment. It's often about providing outpatients in an appropriate setting. We're also trying to move quite a few of our outpatients into community sort of settings. We're looking at moving dermatology, for instance, over the course of the year into a hub and spoke model. And the reason for that is kind of car parking access, but also the fact that we're running out of space on the hospital sites.
Thank you. Can I just, you know, we talking about waiting list and about the emergency. Again, I was yesterday doing enter and we were by the urgent treatment center, you know, in Kobe. And the feedback from there was, why can't we replicate similar sort of concept? Because people are getting quite a good, you know, satisfaction from there. So again, a lot of people were from A&E, it's transfer or whatever. So I just don't know whether, again, this can be, you know, looked into for future. You know, just give you, as you mentioned about the A&E. So this is, you know, the experience I get from the people are getting really good outcome from there. Thank you.
Yeah, we are. I recognise it's a Kettering meeting, but it's important that we recognise the whole of the county and like what we provide to the whole of the county. At the Northampton site, we are building currently a UTC. If you go to the Northampton site, it is a building site in front of the A&E. That UTC will open in late summer of this year. So there will be additional capacity for that kind of Corby-esque treatment. It will be actually open a little bit longer than the Corby site. We also are developing a scheme to expand the Kettering A&E, but I don't want to say too much about that because I'm not sure I know the details. But I will ask Polly to come to the next meeting to give you a view on where we're at with that. It's to do with whether we've got the funding or not. So I don't want to promise something that I can't deliver.
We've got a few questions, but if I just say we have quick questions because to move on. So we've got Peter, then Keith, then Jane, and then Laura, if I suggest the three as one, hopefully. Peter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I raised the NOF question, Laura. Basically, because when I was looking at it, yes, all three of the trusts are in sector 4, and in their ranking, they're all slipping. but particularly Kettering is either low performing as in finance or below average in every one of the domains, whereas the two other trusts have at least got some areas where they're average or better. And I was just concerned that it seemed to be right across the board.
Yeah, to be honest, it's to do with the fact that we set the plan too high for Kettering, and I won't go into the reasons why. But essentially, Kettering's actual performance on waiting times in particular is pretty good. And what I can do after this meeting is share some of the documentation that we look at on a monthly basis as execs. Kettering's doing a really good job, particularly in electives. Genuinely, it is. And what we need to do is make sure that you know that actually at the moment, the waiting times, for instance, the RTT times, Kettering is at about 62%. So that's way better than UHL, and it's better than Northampton. So it's to do with how they measure, like because effectively you've got to make a 5% improvement on your already good performance, which is lots harder than if you're like lower down the rankings. So the NOF rating is really helpful. It is really helpful, and it does guide decision making. But you've also got to look at the sort of actual numbers and where you're at in relation to the peers and whether you're making strides to get yourself to a better position. The plan for Kettering and Northampton, and within UHN, we look at both together because we do transfer patients between the two hospital sites. The plan is that we'll get to 70% by the end of the year for both organisations. And I do think that's achievable. So that's a really good step forward for patients in Kettering and Northampton. It will be brilliant if we achieve that. And I do think we've got, because we've agreed this additional funding and we've got lots and lots of work going on in this area, I do genuinely think it's possible for patients. But I'll make sure that we share some of that documentation so it can give you a bit of reassurance, because if you only look at the NOF rating, you would think it's a deteriorating position, and I don't think that's quite accurate, except for the money.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So Keith and Jane.
Hello, Laura. Two quick questions. Recovery of cost for treatment for non-nationals. I don't know how that's going. And also parking. Would it be a good idea to have a park and ride system, because parking is absolutely ridiculous in Kettering. People just cannot get parked.
We haven't looked at a park and ride system as yet, mainly because of the cost of providing it is quite significant. We have asked the facilities team to look at that once we've got our new bus, because we have bought a bus because it was cheaper than renting a bus from somewhere else for our staff park and ride. So we can certainly look at that, Keith. We are getting a new multi-storey at Kettering, but it probably won't give us, multiples of car parks for patients. It never was going to. So I can take that away as an action for the facilities team to look at. What was your first question? Sorry, I've completely
The first one was recovery of funds for non-national treatment, like anybody that comes in the country and has an operation or whatever in the hospital, are them funds now being recovered?
Recovering these funds is always really difficult for all hospitals, but we do have a dedicated team that looks at this. It's audited through the audit committee in terms of how we're doing in relation to funds of people who shouldn't be receiving treatment here. It is quite difficult to recover funds, but we do try. There are also loads of overpayments and things for other reasons as well that we also endeavour to try and get on top of as well.
Thank you.
I'm getting lots of hands up. I did actually say we'll leave that because we've got lots of other things that Laura wants to sort of brief on. So if we can just take Jane's question, and then if we've got time at the end, we'll gather up the questions at the end. Jane.
Yes. Good morning, Laura. Jane Smith, or Smithy, if you bump into me at Waitrose at Newport Pagnell Road, Northampton. I was leaving this for Chris, but as you have brought it up, I'll ask you. The Quality and Safety says there's concerns about delays at outpatients appointments, especially ENT, and that's why I'm asking you. It says there's an ENT recruitment issue, but you've been given extra funds in March, which is good, to increase outpatient and surgical capacity to deliver more elective appointments for predominantly new patients rather than follow-ups. If we're just going to try and get people in and sort them out and not follow-up's just as important, isn't it? Are we lacking a service there? Thank you.
So follow-ups are important, but there is a sort of national drive to reduce follow-ups generally, because the belief is nationally that we are following up too many patients, and it's costing too much money. We've done quite a lot on follow-ups to do patient-initiated follow-ups, i.e. you don't come into hospital unless you request your follow-up yourself, and that has been successful in reducing follow-up rates. But we've got limited resources, so we've got to work out where we want to kind of make sure that we're having the most impact for patients. So follow-ups is not something that is funded well through the national systems. They do want us to see more new patients and try and sort problems out for patients in one appointment and send them home. In terms of ENT specifically, we do have some capacity issues and some recruitment gaps, which is why it's one of the areas where I'm a bit nervous. And I think we're going to have to do something different in terms of either insourcing or outsourcing. We're currently talking to the clinical team about what might be most appropriate.
Laura, do you want to carry on with your questions? Because you have got a long list there. So I'm sorry to those that put their hand up to ask a question, but just do need to move on. Laura, you're on mute.
I'm going to take the two digital type questions together. One was a question about AI, how we're doing the oversight of our AI deployment. We do have an oversight group for AI, which looks at the ethics of employing AI. And when you procure any type of digital system, you have to go through a really robust and rigorous procurement process to ensure that they meet all sorts of standards in relation to cybersecurity and all those sorts of things. So I'm really confident that we've got really good guardrails behind our AI deployment. What I can give less confidence in is how this will affect the way that we work over the next 5 to 10 years, because I think anybody who tells you that they know what's going to happen in terms of the deployment of AI, I'm not sure we really know. I do think it will affect some roles within the organisation. I do think things like ambient AI that does letter typing, clearly the need for typists will diminish. Like minute takers, those sorts of roles will have to change because the AI will be able to do those tasks. But there will also be other things that AI will be able to do, probably in terms of helping medics, particularly to look at scans and have sort of safety netting, that we also need to be thinking about how we deploy. We're extremely kind of dependent on our overall IT infrastructure working well and not being having good guardrails for cyber attacks and all those sorts of things. And we've got a team that looks at that. But I think this is a risk that's going to face lots of different hospitals. And we've got a really good digital team looking at this, who I have lots of confidence in. The second question I was asked was about, that's to do with this sort of theme, was about accessing records as a result of some of the stories that have been in the national news about other hospitals. So just to give a bit of assurance, we do have quite rigorous policies on this, and we also do include this in our training for new starters. So we use a case study that was actually a Kettering case study for what not to do, and the consequences for individuals if you do look at records that you shouldn't be reviewing. So we do kind of reinforce those messages with staff with regularity. And we have a team that looks at kind of access to records behind the scenes as well, which is led by Sally Beryl. So there are quite a few safeguards that we've got in place. You can't stop this happening though. So you can't put like a block on records, because people may need to look at a record, and you do have to have open access for staff who need access to clinical care, and having it all online makes that easier in some ways, because it's a click of a button rather than ordering the medical records. But we do have really strong policies and a sort of sense of staff know that this is wrong. I also think the publicity about the other cases in the UK, it isn't helpful because people shouldn't have been doing it in the first place, but it's really clear that this is a serious breach and staff should not be accessing records that they have no place accessing. So I would hope that the publicity that has happened over the UK will help this not happen elsewhere, to be honest, because I think some people didn't even know that it was a problem before the publicity arrived. So those are the sort of IT-based questions. The final couple of questions that I was asked about maternal deaths. We had the question was, while a recent maternal briefing was helpful, it'd be good to know what progress is being made for UHN about any national standards. So on this one, I've asked Danny Burnett, who is the head of midwifery or director of midwifery, and she said that we have just received a self-assessment tool on the 1st of June, i.e. 2 days ago, because all trusts and systems are being required to implement a newly launched maternity care bundle by the end of the financial year. We've only just received the self-assessment tool, so this will be filled out by the teams to understand the gaps, and we will share that as appropriate. We're also awaiting the Ockenden publication, and we'll ensure that learning and recommendations inform the priorities this year. We do have quite a lot of oversight on our maternity services nationally, and we have various meetings across the month that look at any gaps in our maternal care. So again, I think what we'll do is we'll do the self-assessment, and if there are any gaps, we will address those as appropriate. But the team are sort of really concentrating on making sure that we're in a good place in relation to maternity at both Kettering and Northampton. I'm going to move on to the final question that I was going to touch, which was about single or multiple room occupancy. What's the model for UHN to balance privacy and patient safety? There are two parts to my answer to this. One is about now. So what happens now when you've got wards that effectively were built in, the 60s or earlier, which they don't have very many side rooms, and what we're going to do in the future when you've got new Kettering Hospital. And they're two different answers. So in the new hospital, it is only single rooms. So there will be privacy for patients. What that means in terms of staffing is you do need more staff to manage those rooms, because clearly you have to have more regular checks. You can't have eyes on every patient because they're in single rooms. But that is the model nationally that is being set. So that is the model for the new Kettering Hospital. It will all be single rooms for patients. For now, we have to deal with the estate as it is. And the single rooms on wards are predominantly used for patients who absolutely require those single rooms. So patients who are infectious, patients who may need them for sort of privacy reasons. It may be that there's some mental health issues that mean that patients need to be in those rooms, and that's done on at the sort of clinical level, and the assessments will be carried out by the site team and also the ward team as well, to make sure that we're making the right decisions for patients. But it will change in the new hospital because it will be single rooms. So those are all of the questions I was going to answer today. There are a couple I haven't been able to find out the answer to, but what we will do is send round a briefing once I've got the answers from the teams that I needed to ask, and we'll send that round by probably this time next week, if that's okay.
Keith.
Single rooms. If you have a person with a heart problem, if he has a heart attack, he doesn't press the button, nobody knows what's going on. Two people, the other person can raise the alarm. I found this out when I was in Alta Golden Hospital in Londonderry. They put a person in with me that had a heart problem, and if he was to have any problems, I was to raise the alarm. Now, if you're a single person in a room, you have a heart attack, nobody knows about it. And I think this is a serious safety issue. Thank you. Apart from people like maybe got sickness or, infections and such like. Thank you.
Sorry, just before we answer that one, can we just on that particular one, actually, Keith, the new hospital design has monitoring so that wouldn't actually, you wouldn't have that situation that would trigger an alarm automatically. It's not down
Well,
to the individual patient.
So if somebody had a heart attack, how's he going to trigger anything?
He doesn't trigger it. The monitoring in the room enables them to know that he's having a heart attack, just as it monitors the temperature of the individual as well.
Yeah, if that's in place, that's not so bad.
It's amazing how the technology's moved on over the years. Rashmi, and then David.
Yeah, I think it's again similarly. I think some of the things that isolation and some people are people with dementia and all that. So I think it is good to have an individual room, which is good. But I think when it comes to dementia and sort of social isolation, so I hope there is some people who need thing, because I think it can create, and I had my personal experience from my mother, that put in a room, and sometimes it can get, despite we having monitoring process and all that can be forgotten. So I just hope there is some kind of flexibility built in, so that is also still people can put together so they don't feel isolated. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashmi. Thanks, Keith. I mean, look, I used to build hospitals in a previous life, and when I heard that they were doing a sort of single room model, I did inwardly sigh a bit. Not because of the reasons you've articulated, actually, more because I know that the staff costs will be more significant, because you do have to have more staff to manage those sorts of layouts. But I can see why they want to do it, and it does afford more privacy for patients. Keith, I do think that Trevor's right. The safety concerns are going to be mitigated by technology. That's the plan. I think the social aspects of it, what becomes more important are things like day rooms in hospitals. But that obviously means that you've got to not use those day rooms as bed spaces in extremis.
Yeah, it would just be like solitary confinement in a prison. You have nobody to talk to. Thank you.
Well, although I think some people don't like being in a shared ward either, so you...
Yeah, my experience, definitely you don't like to be in the... Anyway, David.
Yeah, just on this single room thing, one of my major concerns about it is the impact on the clinical teams and their working. When we were going through the discussions over the hospital rebuild back in 2020-21, there was a lot of discussion about the rooms and so forth. So I made an effort to speak to people, both here in the UK and the US, with regard to medical teams working. There was a general consensus that it actually made it much more difficult for the medical teams. And I'm not convinced by the argument that actually putting more staff in is actually going to negate the risks. Because you're not dealing with a production line here. I think you have to be very, very, very careful with this. And the studies I read on hospitals being built in the States, admittedly, there was a significant issue there in that it was being done for, how can I put this politely, the wrong reasons. It was done as a PR exercise. It was done also because you can, well, certainly there you can extract more revenue. I think we have to be very, very careful with this. At the end of the day, the hospital is about patient clinical outcomes, and that should be the main focus. So I just think people need to sort of put their heads together and rethink this one. I'm also a little bit confused by the fact that when we were going through that process earlier, the number of single rooms, if I remember correctly, were reduced on the basis of cost, because everything was taken back into the centre, everything was suspended, everything was taken back into the centre. So that's a little bit confusing for me. But I'm more concerned about the impact on clinical teams. And I may be totally wrong here. I mean, we've got medically trained people here, but you know, my experience of actually going through the system a couple of times and actually dealing with relatives and friends and so forth is that clinical care is very much a team effort. And you've got to be very careful how you disrupt the line of sight and the communication and support channels. That's my point there.
Yeah, thank you, David. Got Jane and Andrew, and then we'll move on.
I was just going to say, having been a patient at KGH and using one of our single rooms over on Ashton Ward, I didn't feel that there was any compromise to my care. And my daughter recently was in hospital and she was on a multiple bedded bay. And actually there was more of a compromise to her care because she was young, compared to the patients that she was in the room with. Actually, she got overlooked more than the other 4 ladies that were living with dementia. So I think it's about having a really sensible balance. And if in the year 2000, I had my gallbladder out in a private hospital in a single room. So it already exists. There's already models around that happen. So it's just about a slightly different way of working that we have to plan through, in my humble opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Andrew.
Just briefly building on Jane's point, we have neighbouring hospitals who are actually on single wards now, single room now. I think Peterborough, for example, is one in the new build there. So I suggest, because this is obviously a subject of concern for the governors, that we reach out to Peterborough or others, hospitals who have single rooms, just to get a fact-based assessment of how it's working, what are the pros, what are the cons, and what are the mitigations, and then we can feed back to governors on that.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Laura, is there anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, just building on what's already been said. So if you go to a haematology ward that's purpose-built, it will all be single rooms, and that's managed really carefully for obvious reasons. I also think you can't underestimate the impact of lack of sleep, and some of our bays are really noisy. So I think some of the intention behind this national policy is to improve sleep for patients and hopefully get patients out earlier, rather than have disrupted sleep and then you get sicker. But yeah, I think we've probably had enough of a conversation about the single rooms. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you all. It's been great to work with all of you, and thank you so much for the support over the last couple of years. Please do keep in touch. I'm only in Cambridge and I'm still working for the NHS. So thank you very much, everyone, for having me. See you soon.
Thank you, Laura, and all the best for your trip eastward. Right, we're just moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the NHS Reform Bill. Richard.
Thank you, Trevor. So,
sorry, I've just
yeah.
Sorry, I've just jumped.
We jumped over one, I think, haven't we?
No.
It is me. Apologies. Okay, I'll say a few words. Verbal update. So the health bill, as it's called, is at the committee stage in the House of Commons at the moment, and the significant message is that it contains a schedule which removes the roles of Foundation Trust members and the Council of Governors as a formal part of Foundation Trust governance. So that is enacting the aims, the objectives, the content of the 10-year plan and the subsequent King's Speech. So we don't know, obviously, once the bill gets royal assent, it will be up to the Secretary of State when the implementation is for that. It's, you know, depending on the passage through the Commons and the Lords, it may be April 2027, but we just don't know that yet. So in terms of how we are responding, so you'll recall from the last meeting, you as the council formally approved the setup of a task and finish group to look at potential replacement engagement frameworks to, if you like, fill the void from the governor's statutory role to represent community and staff interests. So we have set up that meeting. The first meeting is actually taking place on the 16th of June. So although we've done a verbal today, we will do written reports about the work of that group to September, and we'll pick up the passage of the bill through Parliament as part of that work. The final point I was going to make was just around business as usual, really. We've got a governor election scheduled for this year. So at this stage, we are planning to proceed with those elections. We've got quite a few colleagues who are up for election this year, so we will need to we will need to elect to some seats to make sure we maintain the statutory minimum number of governors, which is 10 governors. So that's all I was going to say. Happy to take any questions, and there will be written reports to future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Rashmi.
Yeah, particularly with the, I did raise with you about the stakeholder governance, and particularly with the Health Watch, as we got North and West. And I know you said they can invite it, to be as attend Council of Governors meeting. But if they have got a statutory role to do, other things like CQC and all that, and are we not, despite what time we got left, long or short, should we not really inviting them? Because I think it's a becoming two-tier system rather than fairer system.
Yeah, I mean, Rashmi, we have a stakeholder governor representing Health Watch with Wendy Patel. She's not on the call today, but she's been a stakeholder governor for several years.
Sorry, Richard, to come back. That was when it was Northamptonshire Health Watch. Now we got Health Watch, two separate, North and the West. So West representative, they don't all talk to the North, so there's a completely different setup.
What I'd recommend, Rashmi, is we pick this up as part of the task and finish group's work, because obviously we're moving into an entirely different framework probably from next year. So stakeholder engagement is going to be key to that. So with your agreement, we'll pick this up as part of that work.
Well, okay, that's fine. I think I just don't want to leave it in hanging, because this can be decision further on long by the time we might say if we agree with that one of completely evolving. But I think I would like to have here and now solution rather than just waiting for the Justice Committee, because that is going forward, this committee, but we're talking about here and now. So I'm not quite happy with, but I'll go along with it. But this is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. Jane Smith and Jane Chambers.
Hello. Yes, hi, Richard. I'm just wondering, what is the idea behind getting rid of the governors statutory? Is it because we're too expensive? Is it just a cost-cutting exercise by the government? And are we really that expensive?
Richard, are you going to try and answer that one, or?
I'm not really in a position to speak for the government about why they want to go down this road. It's a contentious issue. In my view, that there is a cost to having the council, but in the grand scheme of the KGH annual turnover run rate, I'd say it's not significant. So from a personal perspective, it wouldn't be financially driven. So sorry, that's sitting on the fence. I wouldn't want to put forward a justification.
Sorry, Richard, I'll just come in there. Actually, I think the core reason for this was the fact that only a proportion of NHS organisations are foundation trusts, therefore have governors. So it was to actually look to having a single standard for patient and public engagement across the NHS. And it wasn't cost cutting. Far from it. It was about actually utilising the funding in a different way to ensure that there is a wider engagement across the NHS. Yeah, I couldn't see it necessarily. There may be some marginal saving, but I would say that is not the core of it anyway. Jane Chambers, last question.
But it wasn't a question, it was just really building upon what both you and Richard said. This gives us the opportunity to have a look as a county, because you've got to remember we only represent Kettering, but actually as a group organisation, we represent the whole of Northamptonshire, or we have the potential to represent the whole of Northamptonshire, and also, you know, dare I say it, Leicester on the periphery. Do we look at something? So this is something that we'll be able to go through when we look at designing and writing an options appraisal of what we could do for the future, because we're not representative of everybody. So it gives us a chance to design something really, really spectacular, I think. So we'll see how that goes.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Richard. And I did miss an item on the agenda. My papers got covered up. Simon, my apologies. Reports from governors on engagement activities.
Yes, and also the forum, which is with the next item.
Yep.
So that's items 4 and 6. Well,
Yep.
the reports of governors' engagement activities. Thank you very much for those who provided them. There is a paper in on admin control for you to read. Quite a number of you have responded, majority perhaps. Please keep doing that. Please keep sharing the input. What I would say is that the issues that you raise, although they sometimes seem to take forever to sort out, if you raise them and you nudge them gently along, things do change. And I'm not going to take time today to talk about specifics because we're on a short time of the meeting. In terms of the forums, we had forums in April and May scheduled, and we had an additional one which I'll take first, and that was a recent one on the focus on maternity and CYP from our interim director of midwifery, Danny Burnett, and our director of nursing, Robin Binks. And they told us a lot about what's going on and the improvements that are being made. And obviously we can certainly follow that up, and I would suggest if you've got an abiding interest in those two areas, that you exercise the governor's privilege, right, if you like, to ask for visits and talk to people. It's usually very revealing. The other point, the April meeting was with Andrew and Laura, who came along and gave us quite a long session on progress and change. And that included our UHN director, Susie O'Neill, who talked about an increasing level of public engagement by the comms function, which is very welcome, particularly in view of what we just discussed about the change of governance. What I would add to that is our senior team, Andrew and Laura particularly, have huge calls on their time and haven't always been able to attend meetings when we'd like them to do so. But we are unusually lucky, I think, in terms of governors in this trust. We have the ear of the senior team, and they do respond. As Andrew pointed out earlier on, please contact him on his email if you have an issue. So if we want to find something else, we can ask, and we will get extra meetings put in. I don't think I want to add anything to that unless there's any specific questions. Thank you.
Any questions specifically for Simon on either of those two items? I would just add, and some people in the past used to do this, but not recently. I'm also, if you drop me an email, I will also follow up things on behalf of governors. Say in the past, I used to get quite a number, but it's gone quiet. I'm not necessarily looking for extra work, but there, you know, it's, for me, it's important because often when a question is asked, it's about triangulating something. So why has somebody asked a question? What stimulated that? And it's then might link up with something else that we've heard in a committee, or something I've picked up when I've been walking around the hospitals. So please do drop me a line if there's anything you need to raise. Thank you for that, and we will now move on to the board committees. And Alice, you're kicking us off with the audit committee.
Absolutely, Trevor. Thank you very much. Forgive me that I need to leave after this item, if that's okay, but obviously happy to take any questions before I do so. As you'll see, the report this time covers 3 audit committees. Actually, I think the summary refers to 2, but it actually covers 3. So there's quite a lot there. So happy to take questions on any of that, but rather than go all through that in lots of detail for the governors, I'd just like to draw attention to the areas where we have limited assurance at the moment. So lots is going well, but I'm going to just draw out some of those areas where we are having challenges at the moment. And some of those are not new, unfortunately. And really, I hope that we can see there's some degree of story between the February meeting, which is at the start of these papers, and the April meeting. So those where we have limited assurance include the number of overdue and outstanding internal audit actions. We have had a challenge, I think it's fair to say, in recent months around exec and the internal audit team's engagement with the process and prioritisation of clearing those actions down. And the audit committee has drawn that to the exec's attention, and Sarah and Laura have agreed to take some actions on improving that back to the integrated executive team. We've also had a management meeting with the internal audit team, with the team from TIA, our provider, to set out our expectations about how certain things might work. Sarah and myself have done that recently, and we have an agreed plan of action going forwards that we can monitor to check that we have improvement in that whole process. So that has been a tricky issue. I'm happy now that we have aired those issues with the respective parties and we have a plan of action in place. Obviously, if that doesn't continue to improve, then I'll be scrutinising that through the audit committee as we go forward. The other areas just to highlight on briefly, the BAF assurance on the financial plan, you'll note, is marked as limited assurance. That is not anything to do with the quality of the plan, if you like, and the process that's been through. It's purely to acknowledge that at the moment we are in a position where we cannot guarantee that we will be able to produce a compliant plan and match it this year with performance. And it's just acknowledging that, really, that there is that uncertainty this year given the straitened financial circumstances we're in. We also have had some concerns for a number of months around the speed of progress in a similar way to the normal internal audit actions around anti-financial crime investigations. Typically, these are where we have staff involved in a potential allegation of some wrongdoing, and we are investigating that process, and that involves the financial crime team and HR working together on that. We're concerned that those are taking longer than they should to resolve, and therefore the chance of recovering any amount, should we find that there are some owing, is lesser. And we've asked for some actions to re-inject some urgency into those processes. And then I think the final point to flag would just be the cybersecurity internal audit. We received a highly confidential internal audit report on the cybersecurity situation within the trust, and Will, the digital director, came to talk to us about the findings in that. There were some significant areas for the trust to consider. However, none of them were not in the planned work that Will and the team have scheduled in. So whilst it was a serious report, which we took seriously, and I wouldn't want to undermine the importance of that, particularly at the moment where the external environment for cyber risk is really high and not a good place to be in, the trust is working through appropriate responses to that environment. If I were to flag one concern, I guess it would be not the willingness or ability of Will and the team to put in place those actions, but firstly, we're only ever running to catch up, I think, with cyber risk. Everyone is in a bit of an arms race on how well they can protect themselves from cyber attacks. And secondly, I think that we are in a constrained budgetary situation. So we will have to look at everything on the plan through the lens of that constrained budgetary situation. But I'm content that Will and the team have a plan, and we agreed again for updates on that to come back to the audit committee. So those are the areas I'd want the governors to be aware of, but happy to take questions on those or any other areas in the report.
Jane Smith and Rashmi.
Hello, Jane.
Good morning, Alice. It wouldn't be a Council of Governors without me asking you a question.
No, that's fine.
2 questions. One's actually aimed at Andrew, but I'm giving him time to think about it. As you were a former chairman in retail, Andrew, if Kettering General Hospital, you were in charge of it as a retail thing, what would you change that, and what would you do differently to what the hospital's doing to when you were in retail
Shall I answer that one while you ponder, Andrew? Simple answer is, Jane, you're right. It's still a recurrent problem. I'm not happy about it. I can't pretend that I am. It's not so much what you say there around calculating that final payment. The issue we have is the speed of notification when someone is leaving, from them notifying their manager that they're handing in their notice, to the manager putting in a form to complete that, to HR and finance processing that in time for the payroll. Because we have a large number of staff who are moving around and leaving to different jobs and so on. What we have in place are some enhanced controls, but they only detect those problems rather than preventing them. We do have a piece of work in Flow, which again is about automation, some of our admin systems, to make it much easier for a manager to press a button when they get a report that somebody is handing in their notice and speed up that process, which will help. It won't remove the risk altogether, because the manager has still got to think, right, I need to notify payroll, press that button. That's not in place yet. It's nearly there, but it was been slightly delayed due to some technical challenges and testing. But we hope that will be there in the next couple of months. I'm hopeful that will reduce the level. I don't think it will totally remove it as an issue. It's an ongoing challenge. Benchmarking suggests that we are no worse off than other trusts, but that is not in any way making me feel happy and relaxed about this, because given our financial situation, every penny counts. So I don't disagree with you, Jane. Sorry.
You want me to go now, Trevor?
I was going to say, Andrew.
Okay, I'll keep it brief, Jane. Great question. I think three things. I always like to work in threes. Three things. First one is the estate. The estate we have is in many cases Victorian. It's expensive to run. It can be a bit ramshackle. I think if we were a retail organisation, we'd be looking very seriously at the estate and how that can be modernized. Second one is the use of digital and data systems. I think UHN and UHL have both made significant progress over the last 18 months. When we started off, certainly when I joined, our digital and data maturity was extremely low, and I was quite shocked by that. I think we pulled it up by the bootstrings. There are a number of new systems that are being implemented, including PAS and electronic patient records, and working collaboratively with organizations like Microsoft and Nerve Center. And a lot of that is down to the fact that we have a very, very impressive group digital information officer in Will Monahan. So I think we would just be making much greater use of digital and data systems. And the third one is probably culture. I think culture is the glue that holds us together. And I know from my experience in retail, in large organizations, the importance of culture. Interestingly, I used to work for Walmart. Walmart, I think, is the 4th largest employer in the world. The NHS is the 7th largest employer in the world. The focus that Walmart puts on culture and investment in culture and genuine commitment to culture is very significant. And I think we've got some things to learn there about how we manage culture. So 3 things: estate, digital data, and culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you both for the questions.
We've got 3 questions. If we take these 3 questions, and I also want to ask Lindsay to come in after the 3 questions of his feedback on the committee, because Alice does need to go then.
Right.
Rashmi.
Yeah, with the question, you said some of the actions, whether they're taking too long or they're not, not new. So what are the actions within the plans when you say limited insurance there? That time is you really call the time enough is enough and has got to be done something about? Because I don't have an access to all of I haven't had reports all of them, so I haven't had a look of it, only what I had a brief report. So just really interesting, because I think what you're saying in some of the actions, that it just like complete ongoing it. So there must be some of them you can call time. Enough is enough.
I think you're talking about the internal audit actions, Rashmi.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I suppose the committee's power to sort of call time, as you put it, is that we would ask the responsible execs to come and report to the committee. And we did that in the case of those 3 areas, estates, salary overpayments and engagement communication. We did that recently, and we would continue to do that if we are not getting satisfactory progress on those things. They are all areas which are not new by definition because they're overdue and long-standing. But yes, that would be the committee's action, if you like. And if we feel that that is not working, then to escalate that to the board of directors in our upward reporting.
So has that happened given your experience that so far you've been here, in your different roles within the, previous and all that? Has it any happened?
It generally happens. There are some stubborn, it generally makes progress when we do that. There are some stubborn areas like the salary overpayments, which I think you'll remember I've come to talk to you guys about for well over a year now, probably nearer 2, and has been an issue long before my tenure on the audit committee as well. So it's not even new in my time. So there are some stubborn issues where I think some of the issues Andrew's talked about actually around our investment in technology and our smoothness of our processes aided by technology. We are very far behind some more commercial organisations and what their expectations would be, and I wouldn't pretend otherwise at this point.
Thank you.
Can I ask Andrew to come in before Kath?
Yeah, just to reassure the governors that, as Alice said, this was raised at our last board meeting, actually, and we had a good conversation about it. And we talked about the fact that we probably need to elevate the status of internal audit, because going back to Jane's question about the private sector, in the private sector, if you've got an internal audit action that is not completed on time, you're hauled in front of the internal audit team, or you're hauled in front of the board to explain why. So I just want to reassure governors that we are, under Alice's leadership, taking this seriously, and that where actions are not undertaken on a timely basis, then follow-up action will ensue.
Yeah.
Kath.
Yeah, first of all, Alice, can I thank you for a really clear, concise summary? It was really good. Given our growing dependency on data and the cyber kind of network, are you happy with the timelines that are in the plan that Will's given you, or do you and the priorities that have been given?
I think, well, that's a really tricky question, Kath. Well done. I think as I sort of intimated, I'll never really be happy on cyber, and I don't think any audit committee chair in any sector will be at the moment. I think if you're feeling complacent on cyber, you've probably misunderstood the scale of the threat. So no, I'm not thrilled about where we are on cyber. I am content that, given the context and given the protections we have from being part of a broader ecosystem of NHS and government, that we are taking appropriate steps, and that if we can do those steps under timescales we're talking about, we will have done what I consider to be a reasonable response in light of our circumstances financially. My concern is that in light of our circumstances financially, I worry about some of those things being delayed, if I was being really honest with you, because we will have to prioritise investment.
Final question from Peter.
Yeah, it's connected with overpayments, but it's not overpayments as such.
Okay.
It's that bit of the whole system. If there's a problem with managers not notifying payroll, is there a problem with managers not notifying IT that passwords should be withdrawn and access to the computer system stopped? ID cards returned, etc. That just flagged up in me when you were saying about it. So have we got a problem there, or that we don't know about, or is it covered?
That's a really good question, Peter. Let me take away that and come back to you with a response on that. My memory is telling me we have fairly recently at least, had an internal audit report that looked at those sort of basic IT controls, but I would need to just check that and check that it covered that area you're talking about. That's absolutely a fair challenge. Just really quickly, actually, sorry to just pick up as well on the question earlier around foreign nationals and payment for care that they've received. Laura's absolutely right. We do track that each month. We don't meet each month, but every couple of months when we meet, we track that in the financial reports that we receive. And we have talked a number of meetings recently about the need to, if you like, up our debt collection efforts on some of these things, but also to not become a debt collection agency, but to look at how we deal with those things at source. So we're looking at what some other hospitals do, for instance, around areas like, do we have a portable card machine that we have with us in some of these departments? It feels very American and it's culturally challenging, but some hospitals do that sort of thing. So we get a payment up front very soon after the care has taken place, rather than expecting to be able to follow up an overseas debt months or years down the line. So it's very much on the audit committee's agenda. It's not an easy one to tackle, but
thank you, Alice.
No problem.
I was going to come to Lindsay. Very quick one, Jane, before I go to Lindsay.
It's just throwing Alice a bit of a lifeline, really, because not everybody leaves on the day that they submit their notice. There's normally a grace period.
Oh, no, absolutely.
That should then be down to the manager to action the things that need to be actioned, like making sure that any keys are returned, making sure that the ID badges are given back, making sure that, you know, all of the things that belong to KGH, UHN, Leicester, are returned. So there is a bit of an onus upon that line manager to ensure that that due diligence is done, so that nobody walks away with the things that they shouldn't be walking away with, including laptops and electronic equipment.
Absolutely. Yeah, quite agree, Jane.
And Jill, you just sneaked in there as well. I'll come to Lindsay. I will bring
just really quickly. Alice is, of course, absolutely right. The audit committee does look at getting payments back from overseas visitors. And what we've recently agreed is that we'll work much more closely with UHL because they have many specialist services and what's known as a level 3 neonatal unit. We have quite a lot of people coming from overseas to have their babies in Leicester. So they have a much bigger problem, if you like, or issue in terms of making sure they get reimbursed. So that will help us too. So I just wanted to reassure governors that we were working on this at all fronts.
Thank you, Jill. It's a very complex situation, and having worked with the Department of Health in a previous life on this issue, it is far from clear. So I just we will do the best we can around that particular item. Lindsay, you're observing the audit committee. Any feedback?
Yes, in principle, following each meeting, we do have a conversation and what my thoughts and observations were, and in the main, the non-execs do an excellent job in holding staff to account. Their frustrations are the same of all our frustrations in a large organisation such as UHN. But in principle, I'm more than satisfied to say that they do a first-class job. And my only observation, and it's not their fault, and I made this plain to them last time, is the amount of supporting documentation that goes out with the agenda is absolutely mad. I can't believe that anybody can sit there and read 190 pages or 180 pages of supporting documentation together with the various NHS acronyms, and I just get bemused. So to be honest with you, I tend to just skip read it, if that, and leave it to the Neds to do their usual good job. So I have no criticisms, and I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, Lindsay. If we now move on, Chris. Sorry, Lindsay. Sorry, you're breaking up. I thought you finished.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm more than happy to support what the Neds are doing. They're doing a grand job as far as I can see, wading through the amount of documentation and notes to the agendas, and principally holding as much as possible the executive and staff to account. And I have no criticisms in terms of what they're doing. I endorse them fully.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Sorry about that. You seem to have a bit of a gremlin in the system there. Thank you. Chris,
Thank you,
Quality and
Trevor.
Safety.
Thank you, Trevor. Quality and Safety Committee. Could I join the Audit Committee because it has so little paperwork? Because the Quality Committee is frequently 300 to 400 pages. So that would be beneficial to my aging process. But thank you. So the Quality Committee has had 2 meetings on the 25th of March and the 27th of May. I'm going to talk about both of them. And in between those, we've had some informal touch point meetings with the relevant executives. So the first thing I want to mention in terms of quality and safety is the level of operational pressure within both hospitals, and both equally. So Laura has already mentioned about the increased number of attendances in the emergency departments, averaging 6% per month. But I want to talk about the other end of the system, which is for me, and I think for the Quality Committee, a major worry, and that is the whole of the discharge process. But currently, or when last reported, we had across the 2 sites more than 180 patients who had, in the technical term, no right to reside in a hospital. So there was no reason for them being there other than they had nowhere else to go at that time. Now, this issue is multifactorial, but it has a very serious impact. It has a serious impact on those individual patients because quite a few of them will deteriorate during the time they are there and become ill once again. So they go, as it were, into a spiral situation. It also has a massive impact on many other patients who have to be housed in temporary escalation spaces, which is the polite name for corridor care. The final impact of it is, of course, that because it delays ambulances unloading patients in the emergency department, it has a further impact on patients who are still in the community but need to get to the hospital with their emergency. So it is a major, in my opinion, a major quality and safety issue, and we are concerned about it. The system is undertaking various bits of work to try and improve this situation, but working across the ICBs, the local authorities and other agencies who have all different requirements for providing care, this is an immense challenge. And the final thing I'll say about it is I am concerned that it has a serious impact on our staff, putting them under immense pressure. So that's the discharge issue. Laura mentioned that at the other end of the system, the emergency departments are working under great pressure, but are achieving reasonable results in terms of the 4-hour wait, etc. So that's the first thing. The second thing I was going to mention to you is that we had a discussion about digital systems. And this wasn't a concern that we had about cyber, although we are concerned about cyber attacks, but Alice has covered that. What we've noticed is that as we implement digital systems, glitches become apparent, and we've had a couple of occasions over the last year where a serious one where results were not passed on to general practitioners, which caused an immense amount of work for both the general practitioners, but also within the trust, looking at the potential harms that arose as a consequence of that. So we have asked that there is stronger oversight of digital systems post-implementation to pick up glitches as soon as possible, rather than waiting for them to become really established and then there's a major problem. And as a consequence, the Quality and Safety Committee are looking to receive a report on implementation of digital systems and their supervision every 4 months going into the future. So that's the second thing I wanted to mention. The third thing I was going to mention is the complaint system, which I know is close to many of your hearts. The complaint system at Kettering is, I think, in a relatively good position. The complaint situation at Northampton is improving without doubt, following a major reorganisation. Where I think we are challenged at the moment is I don't believe that we are fully achieving the benefits of learning from complaints across the whole of the organisation. And that is requiring further work, but it is, as it were, on the list of things to be done. The final thing I was going to mention to you is a worry which I think affects a number of hospitals, but we could be significantly affected by it, and that is the issue of the capacity and capability of the aseptic department that produces chemotherapy and other sterile treatments that are going to be injected and provided to patients. This is a regional challenge, because it's the same in many other places. I think actually it's a national challenge, and we've heard over a number of years the setting up of regional centres to provide this, but nothing is forthcoming at the moment. But I think we need to keep our eye on this because undoubtedly the system in Northamptonshire is showing its age and it's showing its limited capacity. So those are the 4 things I was going to mention, but I'm happy to take questions. Trevor.
Thank you, Chris. Rashmi and then Jane.
Yeah, the discharge you mentioned the process, and one of them recently I did a enter and view with the reablement team, and within that they were talking about that, especially there are a lot of false patients, and they can become readmission, and they're saying that there is not enough between rather than assessing properly before they're going for reablement team. So I don't know what's your take on that one, or whether you have any sort of thoughts on that one, because they said there in the past there was a thought about having a reassessment team, a reablement team part of that, so that proper assessments are carried out before they've been sent to for reablement. Thank you.
Can I take more questions and I'll answer them all together?
Yeah, no, it's fine, Chris. Yeah. Jane and then Kath.
Yes, good morning, Chris. I managed to read last year's report before I managed to read this month's report, and you haven't mentioned it, so I'm asking it. You were saying about discharge. A lot of the problems with discharge is people waiting for their medicines. The ones that are waiting for care homes and everything else, we know about them, but it's a majority of people waiting for medicines. You can be spending up hours and hours and hours waiting for your medicines. And you noted in the report last September that pharmacy staffing risks were evident. And what can we do about that, please? Because people need their medicines, they can't leave without their medicines. And sometimes when they're sent to the pharmacy within the hospital, they don't have the right medicines either. So what can we do to resolve that? Thank you.
Kath?
Yeah, hi, Chris. So mine is on a completely different subject. So in terms of the digital systems, I don't think your post-implementation would have picked up the problem that you're talking about. The gap for me is that there is a process within the implementation called a user acceptance process. and they would have written like flow charts that says where all these things should go. And as part of that user acceptance testing, so UAT we call it, so as part of that user acceptance testing, that going and landing in a GP surgery could have been tested before the whole system went live. So I think the flaw is probably in that user acceptance testing process, and not in a I agree that there should be some kind of post-implementation audits, but the example that you gave, that would not have been picked up. That still could have gone on for months.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No, right. Rashmi, patients, in my understanding of the discharge process is that patients are declared medically fit and ready for discharge before they go to reablement. And so that is where I think, are they deteriorating in their weight to go to reablement? It is a very complicated situation, but I will take it away and look into it for you. Discharge medicines, yes.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry, Chris. Before you tried looking, but I think this is complex. But what I was getting feedback that they're taken, that they get readmitted because straight away because they are not fit to be discharged. Although you said you're going to look into it, I just want to emphasize that in the context. It's not just like they felt it's properly, but I think if it is done jointly assessed, then the patient don't have to be to and fro. And they were saying about several times being to and fro. Thank you.
I think one of the issues you're raising, Rashmi, is you can be declared medically fit for discharge, but you're then can be reassessed by a different team called reablement, who have different standards. And then you get into this complex situation that you're medically fit for discharge, i.e. you don't require any further additional medical treatment, but this team think you're not strong enough or fit enough to go out generally. So this is where the discharge process becomes so complicated. And the pharmacy issue about medicines is just one of the many factors. Pharmacy might delay you for a few hours or several hours. But what I'm talking about is the number of patients who are sitting in beds for days, weeks, and occasionally months without being able to be discharged to their appropriate facility. So that's the complexity of it. Thank you for bringing me up to date with user acceptance. It's a term I'd not heard before, but one of the things that I did learn was that the company whose systems we were using were not aware that someone else had written into it that it didn't work for our benefit. So it's both the people we're buying it from and our implementation of it that is complex there. But we still need to see post-implementation supervision of systems. Chambers.
Thank you. I was just going to say that discharging complex patients is a very complex route. Having worked in that department myself, yes, a patient become medically fit, and as I like to call them, not socially fit, as in that they may have other things that need to be inputted into a home before they're safe to be discharged. But I do think from previous experiences, we don't always start the discharge at the point of admission, and therefore we can end up, if you like, shooting ourselves in the foot potentially by not having the patients optimized for their next onward journey in the appropriate time. And we do rely on external sources, but also most patients will have a physio or an occupational therapist come and review that patient before going onward on their journey. and we are occasionally at the will of certain care homes who may have a resident only license when they need a nursing license, and then it's about how we find that patient an additional bed in an alternative setting. So it is really, really complex, but I do think that there's things that we can do most definitely to ensure that that patient is optimised fully before their date of discharge.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. And any comments on the committee from Pauline and or Penny?
I don't think Penny's on the call, is she, Trevor?
No.
No.
Pauline?
Yeah, I apologise. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but my experience of the committee is that there is always very constructive discussion and appropriate challenge where necessary. But what I also like about the committee, they do identify where there are things about good practice. So it's a balanced view. And I like the fact that things are followed up and we do get feedback. And I think Chris and Jill are admirable because of the number of papers and the work that they have to do. And I do feel included as a governor because at the end of the meeting, I'm asked if I've got any comments. And that discussion is always very fruitful. So I think they're doing a great job. And you know, I do appreciate all the work that goes into that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline. If we can move on, I don't think we've got an upward report from People Committee, but Denise, is there anything you want to say about the People Committee?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of People Committee, just as a reminder, we hold People Committee meetings quarterly now, and the governor representatives, I should be aware, are Simon and Jane. In addition to the quarterly meetings, we have twice yearly face-to-face staff engagement sessions. So we started doing that late last year, and the purpose of this is really to triangulate some of the information that comes in those reams of papers that's already been mentioned on the meeting here, and it's an opportunity to speak with an invited group of managers and staff and get their views on how some of the things that we're looking at and we're talking about in People Committee are landing out there in the workplace. So I always really look forward to these sessions. Simon was able to attend the most recent one, which was great, so he will have formed a view as well. So if I just give a brief feedback on that, and then the most recent People Committee, the upward report of which is being prepared this week, because today is literally my first day back from holiday, so I'm still trying to think about what day it is at the moment. So in terms of the staff engagement session, that was held on the 30th of April. This one was at NGH, the previous one was at KGH. The key people related initiatives that we looked at was around leadership visibility, communications, violence and aggression, well-being and freedom to speak up. So what we were asking them was really, what have they heard about the initiatives that we've got in place for all of those things? What do things look like locally? What else can we do? And then started to get a focus on behaviours, which is a big part of the work that Paula and her team are doing this year. So we had some really good discussions in the smaller groups and then feedback to the room. In terms of the information that came out, I think it's fair to say that there were no surprises. We have been doing, and through Paula and the team, a lot of this triangulation type activity over the last 12 months in particular. The key things that people were flagging up and talking about in terms of things that impact them on a day-to-day basis was really around staff retention and uncertainty around some of the roles, particularly around the digitalisation agenda, which is understandable. The whole aspect of psychological safety and people feeling safe to speak up, which touched on freedom to speak up, but also just generally in the workplace. Leadership well, it started as leadership visibility, but actually through the discussion, what they were really talking about was accessibility. So yes, they do want to see leaders, but it's not that they want everybody there every day, because clearly there's a lot that goes into the leadership role. But I think what came out of that, and that was interesting, was that this is more about accessibility of leaders and who can you go to and how can you get access. So that's a big something that that Paula and the team have taken away. And then the big overarching theme, and is something that it sounds very simple, but we've been talking about this since I joined the board. The word that summed up what they were looking for was kindness. So just be kind to each other. If everyone's kind to each other on a day-to-day basis, then a lot of everything else that we're looking for is just going to follow from that. So deal with people in a kind way, whether that's patients or, in the case of the aspect that we're looking at, other staff. So that was a really good session, and we're planning on holding the next one in another 6 months. The People Committee to feedback on was the People Committee on the 21st of May. Each People Committee, quarterly People Committee, we, as well as the normal things that we look at, which is the CPO report on the key performance indicators, we obviously always look at the workforce and financial sustainability figures, and we look at the things like the resident doctor 10-point plan that comes to us every time. So we have some standing agenda items, but then each quarter we have a theme that we look at in more detail, and this month's theme was was education, learning and development. If I just feed back on the things that we pulled out from that committee to escalate to the board. So one of the aspects to escalate to the board from the CPO report, from Paula's Chief People Officer report, was around employee relations, and in particular grievances. There is a large increase in the number of grievances currently being raised, which is it's clearly concerning, and it does take a lot of the people team's time dealing with them. It's very resource hungry. There is a view also that actually, if people are raising grievances, people are speaking up. So I do like to look for a positive in situations as well. So I think at least, we have got, the more people feel safe to speak up, the more people will raise grievances. So that is good, but we definitely felt that this should now be added to the people aspect of the BAF, as it is a risk that we need to keep an eye on, that it's not getting out of control. So that was for employee relations. On the workforce financial sustainability side of things, there's been some excellent progress made on the agency spending. So we've got that, I feel, well and truly under control. The bank spend is still an issue. I mean, we were given a lot of information to provide assurance around the processes that are in place to control bank spend. I feel that the issue that we've got, and this was particularly highlighted by Hemant, is the key issues for us have been around the non-elective activity levels, which has sent up the bank spend. And those are things which it is difficult to control. I think it's been mentioned, although I've not been in the whole meeting, the number of people coming through ED. It is, we've had days we've consistently been on Opal 4. It felt like winter over the last few months, even though it's not been in the winter, the usual winter months. So that is an issue. That there are a lot of things in place now to put more control in around the spend, but we're not where we need to be. So that's gone in as a limited assurance. in terms of freedom to speak up, that went in with limited assurance, but with a number of green shoots. And obviously, I think everyone will be aware that we are or have now just finalised the process of changing over to an independent provider. So over the last couple of years in particular, we consistently got feedback that people didn't feel comfortable with freedom to speak up because in effect it wasn't independent, and this was no reflection on the people that were there as guardians. Both Luke and Jane carried out great roles, but the decision was made to go to an independent service. But we put it in as limited because it's literally like within, or certainly at the time of the meeting, we were within the first few days of that. So it was a bit of wait and see. But there are definitely some green shoots there. And then appraisals came in as limited assurance as well. Again, a lot of work. We put it in as limited assurance on the basis that there is consistent underperformance against target, but reasonable assurance around the action plan that was in place. And because this was part of the deep dive, we did get quite a lot of detail about the action that is being put in place to encourage line managers in this really important aspect. So those are the key things that I'll be feeding back to board on. As ever, Simon and Jane provide great support for me and for the People Committee. It's good to have them there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. Rashmi, take two questions here because we've got a couple more committees still to do and time's running short. So Rashmi, then Kath. We take two questions first, Denise.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you mentioned about the behavior and there is no surprises. So within that, what is coming, whether you are tracking within each sort of wards department or what area, and are you really seeing change at all coming through? Because we if one hand there is a behavior and if you know surprises, so you know it's like I don't know how to put it in the sense that you're accepting that what you are seeing it, but are you really seeing some progress?
And
okay.
And Kath.
I was actually going to ask a similar question, but I'll ask a different one.
Okay.
Thanks, Denise. In terms of the employee relations, the grievances, I'm in agreement with you. If people are actually speaking up, that's a really good thing. But one of the things that concerns me, and it's the feedback that I've had from because I'm a staff governor, people that I've had in the organisation, is the timescales it takes to investigate these. So I don't know whether you've got a metric or a measure where we actually hold people to account for actually turning those things around. They can go on for months. So it's just an observation.
Yeah. Okay. If I very quickly come back on that one and then Rashmi, if that's okay in that order.
Yeah.
Yes, you are quite right, Kath. These things, and I did make reference to the resourcing of the, for the people team and how stretched they are. Paula has been given authority to recruit someone in to lead that team, to get an extra resource in there and extra expertise. So we are really hoping that that helps to speed things through as well, because it's difficult for people all around. It's difficult for those people that have raised the grievance, and it's really difficult for those people that have had grievances raised against them as well. So we want to get through them as quickly as possible. Rashmi, yes, in terms of it's kind of, you said it was no surprise, but what you're doing about it in effect, but you asked it in a much nicer way than that. So those teams and departments where there are issues, they do know where these teams are. These teams have been highlighted and spotlighted, if you like, in terms of people going in, both from the people team, the culture team. They've been doing work with a number of individual teams across the hospital, and have made large strides. I mean, the maternity side of things at Kettering is one good example. Some really big strides that were made there when there was a focus on improving the culture and putting different initiatives in place around the Be Kind side of things. And some of the work that they've been doing with some of these individual teams, where we have definitely seen progress, they are going to be rolling it out across wider teams in the organisation. So I do feel that we are starting to see progress. It's tough. We've got a lot of people out there, haven't we? Yeah. Thank you.
But sorry, just very quickly, you said there's a progress, but within each ward, or you said tracking, is there a way to know really where it is done, so we can have some idea that's any ward that has made a really good progress? If there's some example, then I think this will really give, it is good what you said, giving assurance, but I think really give much more assurance if you have got some sort of examples within each ward or department or whichever, there is really traction being there, sort of thing. So yes, but Trevor, sorry, yes, carry on, Jill.
Yeah, we do get that, and we are able to get that through the pulse surveys and through the staff survey as well, but also through input from the people team side of things. So we do get that. Maybe we need to put more out about it. So I'll make a note of that. So. Yeah.
So sorry, Trevor. Can I just say I'll have to leave at 12 o'clock? There's digital transformation, so I've got to go. So.
Thank you, Rashmi. I am trying to get through so we can get to your report. Simon or Jane, feedback on the People Committee. Simon.
Yeah, I'll seek to raise my hand. No, I think Jane summarised it very nicely. I think what was very clear from the last people meeting was that the people function of the trust is extremely busy on all fronts, and it felt like everything is in control, and there was a good deal of honesty about the levels of assurance, which were not as high as obviously people would like, but there was recognition that there was green shoots, as Denise pointed out. I mean, all in all, I felt I was reassured by the process that's going on and the level of commitment to it, is what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I am going to quickly chat. Oh, sorry, Jane.
I was just going to add one thing, because obviously in the People Committee, we talk a lot about culture and the change, and, we've all got to own the change of the culture. It's not just down to the People Committee. And I think that's really important to remember, that they're not the owners of it. They're just the ones that are corralling all of the things that are happening. We have to take personal responsibility as well.
Thank you, Jane. That's an extremely important point. Thank you,
Thank
Denise.
You
I will channel my inner Damien first of all and do the Finance Committee. Quickly, the report you've got there are 3 limited assurances. I'm not going to go through them in detail. We actually have touched on a number of those. What I do want to do is mention the last committee, which was on the 26th of May, and a couple of things from that committee. One was a small glimmer of good news, that at month 1 we are on budget. In fact, we're slightly ahead of budget, but in a positive way, in that we are there or thereabouts. But the caveat on that is our savings plans are still not fully developed to make the level of saving required to even make the deficit that we are aiming for in the first place. So about 2/3 of the savings plans are developed, and we've asked for more detail at the next committee on the breakdown of the risks around those savings plans. The second point from the committee was on the finance side was even with those savings plans fully delivered, we have a substantial problem with cash flow, and that the finance team are spending a lot of time micromanaging the payments to ensure our local small suppliers are getting paid on time, negotiating with bigger suppliers to try and elongate payment terms. We're already at 45 days on most large contracts, and then to be clear about what next. and part and parcel of that is to demonstrate to NHSE that we are managing our cash properly. So when we try to draw down additional cash, which comes at a cost, we have to pay interest on that cash, then we will be able to get that money. But it is, and I know one of the questions that Laura's coming back with an answer, it is something that is of serious, very serious concern, how we manage the cash. And it is taking up additional resources and additional cost to actually be able to meet that. But the current plan that we've got for this year, even if we deliver that plan, as I say, at the moment, we've only got 2/3 of the savings identified, we will still have a substantial cash issue, both at KGH and NGH. The other part of the committee is looking at performance, and on the performance side for the beginning of the year, again, we're doing well. There are areas that we need to improve, and at the next meeting we're having a deep dive into what the actions are being taken to actually improve on those areas. So that's a very quick roundup from the Finance Performance Committee, and I will quickly, without much more ado, go on to the Strategy, Transformation and Digital Committee. We've had 2 meetings, again, one in the papers, the second one was on the 28th of May, and actually the 28th of May I will spend more time on than the earlier one. We had a lot of discussion and debate around how do we align our future hospital building works, not just the new hospital programme, Rockingham Wing, UTC and others, with what we need as an ongoing clinical facility. And how do we make sure what we've got is fit for purpose? And there are new target operating models being developed to enable us to align what we're going to build with what we need for the future. And as I say, that's not just about the new hospital, that's a number of other elements. And you know, putting in the business case, we're putting the the SOC in for the Rockingham Wing shortly. There's a series of things there that we need to make sure that when we put them in, we are not just building for today, we're building something that will be fit for purpose. It can't be 100% perfect, but we had a lot of discussion around that. The other area that we had a lot of discussion around was the work this year on strategic transformation and the programs there. Becky Taylor came along and presented a significant paper on the work that's going to be undertaken this year. I can't go through all of it at the moment, but we took a substantial assurance about those programs, the detail that was there. It won't turn the organisation around, but it is certainly moving in the right direction. What we will be doing though is monitoring. So it's one thing having a plan. The second is monitoring that actually they are delivering. So I will end there. Not seeing any hands up, so I'll swiftly go over to Rashmi about the ICANN.
Yeah, I said that report is there just information. People have got any questions to ask, and it's all mainly all different aspect of mainly. I think it's the new health tenure plan focus and all that, and also some service. It's all there. So if people have got any questions, then ask.
Thank you, Rashmi. And if anybody's got any questions, if they want to drop an email to Rashmi with anything from that report, thank you, Rashmi. Continually represent us in that area. I don't know how many years now you've been doing this, but thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Any other business? I wasn't informed of any before the meeting, so any other business? Well, thank you, everybody, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contributions, your questions. Hopefully you've got most of the answers that you need, and have a good rest of the day, everybody.